Twitter is blocking tweets that criticize how the Indian government has handled the pandemic.
Here's a summary of the article.
On Thursday, India's government ordered Twitter to block more than 50 tweets that criticized how it has handled the pandemic. Twitter complied, preventing people in the country from viewing the posts from people who include a state minister, an opposition member of the Indian parliament, filmmakers, an actor, 2 journalists, and several ordinary people. If it is determined to be illegal in a particular jurisdiction, but not in violation of the Twitter rules, we may withhold access to the content in India only. The company said that it notified the people whose tweets it restricted in India ahead of time, telling them the company was responding to an order from the Indian government. One of the restricted tweets belongs to Malloy Ghatak, an All India Trinamool Congress Party minister from the state of West Bengal, where Hindu nationalist Prime Minister Narendra Modi recently held massive election rallies, even as hundreds of thousands of Indians tested positive for COVID-19 daily. The government also restricted dozens of tweets that criticized Modi or shared pictures of India's overflowing crematoriums and hospitals, in addition to a tweet from the Indian American Muslim Council, a Washington, D.C.-based advocacy organization of Indian American Muslims. This isn't the first time Twitter has complied with the Indian government's orders to censor tweets. The company subsequently struck a defiant note, unblocking accounts belonging to journalists, activists, and politicians, despite jail threats from the Indian government.
This post received a score of 34,000, with an upvote ratio of 93%. Here are the top comments in response to this article.
Doesn't this mean the usual, make more tweets?
Streisand effect.
Questions to Redditor from India not related to censorship but with the COVID explosion the past few weeks. Why the sudden explosion and what the government could have done differently which could have avoided this?
Government of India could have funded, helped Serum Institute of India and Bharat Biotech by increasing the manufacturing capability in 2020 of the 2 vaccines currently used in India to start the vaccination program on a larger scale. Government of India should have approved more vaccines earlier such as the J&J, Pfizer etc. and should have started importing the doses after the trials in other countries. TLDR, the political and administrative leaders both in the central and state governments had a false sense of security and were too lax. The central and state governments allowed multiple super-spreader events.
Oh, and also the fact that they failed to cancel a country-wide festival known as Kumbh Mela, which saw at least 200,000 people just to please the overly orthodox and heavily religious people. Edit. 2.5 million.
It was 2,800,000 who congregated over several days.
And then went back home, seeding the superspreader event all over the country.
Twitter will stand up to Russia and China but not India.
Twitter, alongside Google, Facebook, YouTube and others aren't allowed to operate inside China to begin with, so they don't really lose anything by standing up to China. As for Russia, the Russian population is 144 million in total, India's is 1.3 billion, so Twitter can afford to stand up to Russia, but India is a whole different story due to the sheer amount of people they have. Their population is almost twice the size as the entire population of Europe, and as it turns out, India also happens to have the world's cheapest data plans. Source.
Russia also has its own social media platforms that are more popular there than the Western alternatives.
Language barrier does works.
Greater than language barrier does works. Truer words were never broken.
It's the newly amended IT laws of the Indian government that is compelling Twitter to take action. Our government doesn't like getting criticized at all. They are infallible. Here, activists, reporters, and journalists are actively persecuted. Rule of law is such a joke in this country.
Google Sadiq Kappan. He is a journalist who went to report on a rape case the government was trying to cover up. This was 7 months ago. Kappan has been in jail since, on charges of terrorism and sedition, and his health has seriously deteriorated.
This video was automatically created by Reddit to speech. The article and comments in this video were selected from Reddit according to their upvotes, and any paraphrasing was performed by smmry.com, without any human intervention.